Hi, I've been homeless over a year, and I've been making videos to kind of as a diary for my journey for the past year. Started off on TikTok and now it's here on YouTube. But I've had followers and subscribers frequently ask if I would do an informational video about some of the things that you need to do if you're looking at being homeless or you just became homeless. So I'm going to try to give some general information and some expectations, and I hope that it's helpful. But I'm also going to preface this all with this is not a good time to be poor, and it is really not a good time to be poor and homeless. I need to tell you before I get into any more detail that this is all coming from my personal experience. I'm not a social worker. And because I don't know your specific situation, I don't know if you're a man, a woman, I don't know if you have kids, I don't know how you're facing homelessness. Did you surrender your apartment? Did you get evicted? Are you, did you experience some sort of crisis and now you're immediately homeless? I don't know. But all of those things do kind of play a part into what services may or may not be available for you. And again, because the resources that are available vary so much from one place to another, state to state, it is really hard to give you specific information. But I'm going to do the best to give you kind of the generic breakdown of what to do. You need to take care of you in this situation. Very likely, there aren't going to be any services immediately available to you, and you're probably going to need time to apply and or locate the resources that you're going to need to survive. And in that waiting period, you need to find shelter, you need to find where you can get food, if any, and where you can get water, if any. Because if you don't have those three things, you're not going to make it. You're not. So you need to put your personal safety and your basic needs first, because the rest of this stuff is going to take time. Before you start running in different directions trying to find help, you need to start with getting all your ducks in a row with your documentation. If you don't have all the documents and can answer all the questions that they're going to be asking you, you're going to find yourself ineligible and maybe even waiting, like a waiting period to be able to reapply. And it can dramatically delay processing help for you. It is very unlikely that you're going to see immediate help anyway, but if you don't have the documentation, you're not going to get anywhere. And unfortunately, if you don't have a mailing address, that just makes things even more complicated, because there's a whole host of things that you can't get without an address. And with that internet, all of these places are usually understaffed, and a lot of them are tapped out. And if it's social services, they really just don't even answer calls anymore. There's nobody there. You need to get on the internet. And it's pretty much a don't call them, they'll call you scenario, because you could wait for days, even a week or more, trying to get a hold of somebody on the phone that will be able to help you. But they probably won't. They'll probably defer you back to their website and leave you hanging. So the common knowledge resource across the nation is 211. 211 is an information service. They don't provide housing, they don't have food, they don't have resources. All they have, based on your zip code, is a list of resources and or organizations that are in your area. And based on your situation, they may not all apply. But that's what 211 is. It's a very basic number, it's very easy to contact, and they're going to have all of this basic generic information to start you on that path of finding resources. The first recommendation is to reach out to your community, but I don't think that should be your first priority. I think your first priority is to deal with social services. Social services are things like SNAP, the food program, Medicaid, the healthcare, and then Section 8, which is subsidized housing. There are other housing programs available, but in our discussion here, we're primarily focusing on Medicaid and food stamps, because a lot of the other programs you're not eligible for unless you're eligible for Medicaid or food stamps. In order to really get anywhere with your application, you're going to have access to the internet and be able to submit your documentation online. It's so slow now, again, that it's going to take a couple weeks before they even start. And I really would encourage you to make sure that you've got all the documentation ready to go, because if you miss something, give the wrong information, it's just going to delay it even more. And then there's always the possibility that you can either get bumped or get rejected. And they even will go so far as to prevent you from reapplying for a waiting period, which could be 1 to 3 months. The application process and the waiting times and all of that are like many other intentionally designed barriers to prevent you from either accessing those benefits or getting the full benefits that you deserve. It's a lot like disability. You almost need a lawyer to apply. And unfortunately, thanks to our politicians, both sides of the aisle, they've now got all sorts of new wonderful things that they've tacked on that you need to have to be eligible, including work requirements. As a good example, here in Michigan, as of February, thank you, Gretchen, you now have to be working at least 20 hours a week to be eligible for food stamps. And if you make over a certain amount of money in a single week, or in a month, or in a quarter, you are going to get bumped off from all of those services and programs, and the clock resets. That's why I suggest you get the ball started with that first. Because you're going to be waiting forever. And remember that there was a line before you got there, and there's even a bigger one behind you. And there's a finite number of people with an overwhelming caseload that just look at you as a number. As disappointing as the social services part of this is, it doesn't get any better with the rest of the list that 211 is going to provide you. The rest of the list is going to be a collection of nonprofits, charitable organizations, and churches that provide some sort of services. It sounds good. It really does. The unfortunate thing is that a lot of that isn't going to get you anywhere. So let's elaborate on that. Nonprofits, very disappointing. There are those bigger organizations I'm sure you're familiar with. A lot of them, they're just like businesses anymore. So they're looking at their bottom line, their revenues, that kind of thing. The bigger organizations have a lot less resources than they used to provide because they're too busy paying people that think they're important. Same thing for the smaller organizations. There's at least 2 nonprofits on the Michigan 211 list. The only thing they do is refer people to 211. And I can't tell you how ticked off I was just going down this list, and I get a hold of a place and they're like, oh, well, we just refer people to 211. Then there's a handful of ones that just have the same resource list that you get from 211. So they're not referring you back to 211, they're just giving you the same information. Really unfortunate. I also had several nonprofits pretty much tell me outright that they don't really do any services. And I had 2 specifically kind of give me the cycle of what a lot of these nonprofits are all about. And in this particular case, they raise money to have fundraisers, to raise more money to have more fundraisers, and to pay their administrative costs. Then they raise money to have fundraisers, to more fundraisers to pay their administrative costs. Because a lot of these nonprofits and charities, because again, they're run like businesses, they got a CFO, a CEO, a director, or a pastor, and their little staff that need an absorbent amount of money and not enough left over for any of the services for the people that they claim to serve. The same place also gave me an example of what their month looks like, and they have 2 events. They have a bruncheon at the beginning of the month for their volunteers and their temporary staff. And then they have a fundraiser dinner for all their board members and potential donors at the later half of the month. They're supposed to provide housing. None of that. None of it. And just like with social services, a lot of them have requirements and expectations and loopholes and excuses and a lot of hopes and prayers, but not a whole lot of help. But 211 will recommend that you reach out to your community first, and your community is going to likely have a nonprofit, a charity, or a church. So churches. In that community outreach, looking for nonprofits or places that might be able to assist you. And regardless of how small your town is, there's a good chance there's at least one church. And even if there isn't a church, you might have a city hall or some other municipality that you can contact, and they may have some sort of resources, even in a small town. But your churches, many of them do have some sort of love fund to help people in crisis, but those funds are usually limited and quite often they're for specific needs. Your bigger cities and bigger churches, they have a wider variety of programs, but unfortunately, just like the nonprofits, you're going to find them fairly short on the actual services. Then there's the whole religious aspect of it. A lot of the missions and shelters are religious based, and they require religious things in order to participate. And if you aren't in one of the demographics that they accept as one of their own, you can be denied services, ostracized, discriminated against, and even violated in various ways because they don't serve your kind. That's just the reality. There are some areas and some cities where churches pool their resources, which is great. They can help more people in more ways, but there is still that application, qualifying, eligibility thing going on. So one more thing to think about. That's 211 stuff. Hit up your local community for their nonprofits and churches, and then the bigger community beyond that. Apply to social services, hurry up and wait. In the meantime, if you're not in a big town, you might have to find a place, open air, find a place to sleep. If you're in a big city, you're probably going to have to find a place in open air for a place to sleep. The resources are really tapped out. A lot of it's first come, first serve. And there's no immediate fixes to anything, really. And if you've been watching the news, you know that they've gutted, defunded, and basically shut down just about everything that helps people in our situation. I wish I could be more encouraging. I wish I could tell you what to do next. I don't even know what I'm doing. I've been very blessed and in a very unique situation that I had built a community on TikTok before ending up homeless. That community, this community, has supported me throughout this entire year. I even worked 7 months of last year, but working part-time at minimum wage, you're not getting anywhere, especially if you're homeless. You're just making food and trying to get through to the next payday. Living in a city also poses all sorts of risks, like, being vulnerable to crime, exposure because there's no bathrooms, there's no water, there's no food. And then there's the police. It's illegal to be homeless. It's illegal to sleep or be transient anywhere these days. And they do not need probable cause to pick you off for like trespassing, some vagrancy law, being, in the wrong place, public space during curfew hours. I mean, the list goes on. And in case you didn't figure it out, if they put you in jail and fine you, you're not going to be able to pay the fine. And then you just create this cycle of just in and out of jail, in and out of jail. Because at the end of the day, if you're not working a good job and meeting the paywall to participate in society, then the only place that you have any worth is under cruel and inhumane treatment under slave labor in the prison system. I keep hoping and praying for something to change. And I keep hoping and praying and planning to change my situation, because this is not sustainable. A lot of what I thought I was going to be able to do here isn't going to happen. And because of my health issues and because of, not being able to know whether or not I can rely on support, I can't guarantee that I'm going to continue to have food. I don't, like another medical emergency and I could be in serious jeopardy. But I weighed the risks, and for me personally, I felt like during this period at least, I'm safer out in the middle of nowhere than I am in the middle of somewhere with a whole bunch of other people that look like they don't belong. I hope this is helpful. I hope that some of this information will point you in the right direction. But I don't want you to have unrealistic expectations. And if you've never had to deal with any of this before, be thankful. But this is how bad it's gotten. This is how hard it really is. But don't give up. Don't let this situation be the end of your story. And don't tackle it alone. If you need to call a helpline, do it. If you need to cry, do that too. But your only goal outside of anything else is to survive. And you need to do that both mentally and physically. It's going to be hard to hold it together. But if you don't, everything else will really start to close in on you. And things will get a lot more difficult. So on that note, I wish you all well. And I sincerely hope that you will find a safe place and stay safe.